This week, it's the security news. Up first, Unskilled hacker linked to years of attacks on aviation, transport sectors, the elite hackers of the FSB, Bionic Eyes Go Dark, Herpaderping, and more. Next up, Chris Sistrunk, technical manager of ICS OT at Mandiant, for an interview that he's titling Blaming Stuxnet. The final segment is a pre-recorded, coughing interview with none other than Josh Corman about his time at CISA. Very, very awesome interview. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly.
Yeah, no, I'm live. Just messing with you. Kind of mess with the production crew every once in a while. But let me introduce you to the host of our show, a man who is a firm believer that you can pick your nose and you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your friends' butt, Mr. Paul Asadorian.
Welcome, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. It's episode number 729, being recorded on February 23rd, 2022, right here in G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island. Mr. Larry Pesci is here with us.
Are you ready to rumble?
Are you ready to rumble? We can't say that. We'll get sued.
Didn't say the whole thing. I said, are you ready to rumba?
Rumba.
See?
Are you ready to Roomba?
Roomba? Either
Do
way.
you still have Roombas?
No.
No.
I
They
actually,
all died? Roombas die, man. I wish I had
smell
a
what the
dollar.
vacuum is picking up.
If I had a dollar.
for every dog turd it ran over.
I'd have exactly $3, and if I had a dollar for every Roomba that I had, I might have exactly $12.
Yep. Yeah, I actually had some old school Roombas and even the old school Roomba hacking book and all that stuff. And
Oh yeah,
you know, my projects have projects. Those had to go.
there's a lot. Anyway, we'll talk about vacuums coming up. Mr. Josh Marpet is here with us. Josh, welcome.
Why, thank you, sir. Pleasure to be back again today.
Nice to have you, my friend. Mr. Tyler Robinson. Tyler, I feel like we haven't spoken all week, man. It's sad. I'm glad you're here now so we can catch up.
I know. Where have you been?
I was on vacation, actually, so it wasn't your fault.
Okay.
The theme of tonight will be everything is Paul's fault, except that's always the theme. Mr. Lee Neely is here with us. Lee, welcome.
Hey, it's good to be here. You know, if sweet dreams are made of cheese, how am I to disagree?
You don't want to disagree. Nope. The brie is delicious. So is burrata.
Yes, it is.
A couple of quick announcements to get us started. Obviously, this is Paul Asadorian with Security Weekly, and I am super excited to tell you about our latest partnership with Intel, Intel's vPro platform. You might have heard of it before. It's been around for 15 years. IT and security teams have so many challenges that we outline on the show every week, including trying to keep your computers up to date with patches, making sure all hardware and software is working for your remote employees, and of course, keeping things as secure as possible. Intel's vPro platform is designed to do just that. Make it easy for your teams to keep your fleet of computers well maintained, as well as we all know, a maintained network is absolutely a more secure network. Join us for an interview with Yasir Rashid, Global Director, Enterprise Endpoint and Security Products from Intel Corporation on March 16th. That's right, we swapped out the guest on this one. We'll explore all of the features and solutions provided by Intel vPro. Visit securityweekly.com/Intel for more information. Couple of webcasts coming up. March 2nd, learn 5 things you can do to catch bad guys with Doug Burks from the Security Onion. That's like a free hour of Security Onion training. You want to make sure that you do that. And Josh, are we giving away a free $50 gift card to
Hacker Warehouse.
HackerWarehouse.com. If you don't shop at HackerWarehouse.com, you should. If you don't or you do, you should register for the webcast because one lucky individual will win a free.
We're getting corrected. It's a $100 gift card.
It's a $100 gift card. Do I hear 150? Do I hear 150?
No, stop. Stop.
No, you don't hear 150.
I don't hear 150, so it will be $100 sold to whoever the lucky random listener is to Doug Burke's Security Onion, 5 things you can do to catch more bad guys. Then on March 10th, introduction to KQL queries with Darwin, Azure, and KQL queries. Tyler Robinson will be on that one as well. Again, register and you qualify to win a $100 gift card to Hacker Warehouse. Visit securityweekly.com/webcasts to register today and our on-demand training. Now, the on-demand stuff, you do not qualify to win fabulous prizes, but you can still go to securityweekly.com on demand and watch the material. And you may not benefit from all the things that you benefit from watching it live, including participating in our Discord channel. So, that is a long-winded way to say that we are now going to talk about the security news.
Yay!
Yay! What are we going to talk about? It's been a busy day.
Oh my God.
And I have really sucked at preparing the news for this segment, and I apologize. Again.
What? Wait, you don't have any stories this time?
I have 5 stories.
Oh, okay. I got to reload the page.
Yes.
Wait. 5 stories? Who have you and done? What have you done with Paul Asadorian?
I know.
Wait. They're not showing up on the site.
And I have some coding bugs to fix, apparently. I'm just, I'm batting 1,000 today. Batting 1,000.
One more thing to blame on you.
That's right. Can we maybe talk about Russia and Ukraine, rather? I saw Ukraine. New sandworm malware. What is going on? Is it happening all over again?
Larry, you picked that out too. What the hell? It looked like deja vu to me.
Yeah, it kind of did. Admittedly, I got down a whole bunch of other paths related to Ukraine, and didn't get nearly down this road as far as I should have. So, but yeah, it is seeming like the same things all over again.
I'm curious how they're tying the two together, because from what I gleaned, it was either associated to like Voodoo Bear or Sandworm, and they were attributing it to new malware. So either they have good or some visibility around the actors and what they're doing. They've been in network a long time, or there's enough similarity that they feel comfortable to correlate both potentially disparate actor groups to a malware that is new. If it's new, that doesn't lend itself to the TTPs or being able to correlate code sharing. So very interesting in how they're doing that.
Was it the book Sandworm on its own or other works? Because I read other works around the same time. Black Energy Disruption of Ukraine, their electrical grid in 2015, In Destroyer in 2016, NotPetya in 2017, Winter Olympics and Paralympics Disruption in 2018, and then attacks against Georgia in 2019. Basically all tie back to the same, Russian GRU, Russian GRU or hacking groups.
Black Energy in 2015, In Destroyer 2016, and NotPetya in 2017.
Black Energy, right. I'm sorry, what did I say?
I don't know.
But you're right. Black Energy was
2018 Winter and Paralympics as well.
So some of what they're gearing up for is the exploitation. We've seen this before, if this is any indicator of things to come. When they start to exploit home routers, home NAS, they're either building up Unitrib software for either denial of service or pivot points to launch attacks from, as Unitrib and the distributed denial of service or attack from them.
But here's the thing. Right now, no matter who attacks Ukraine in any kind of cyber, I hate using this term, cyber capabilities, but for lack of a better term, we'll go with that.
I think that's appropriate here. Honestly.
We're going to attribute that to Russia.
Yep.
I mean, the smoke and mirrors thing they got going on is not only indicative of things to come, but also kind of the MO of Russia.
Yep.
But the whole, these smoke and mirrors are, it's what we expect from Russia, to kind of pass blame, do the whole Jedi mind trick of No, we're not. We're not going to invade. We are not going to invade Ukraine.
Kabuki theater, as I saw it referred to as.
It's really because they don't care. Like, we're already getting ready to drop again more sanctions. Again, I don't. Despite whatever your political view is, like sanctions is kind of a lame ass way to try and steer a nation that's hell bent on going to war and or causing destruction.
I feel like sanctions are like boycotting. Like when a group of people somewhere in the world go, we don't like whatever XYZ company does, so therefore everyone should boycott XYZ company. And that could be, I mean, we've seen, proposed boycotts of all sorts of different companies for all sorts of different reasons, which we won't get into because they get very political and about people's beliefs and whatnot. But sanctions are literally just that. Like they're we should boycott that company.
Arguably, I think the sanctions have a little bit more immediate effect.
Yeah, they got a little more teeth. You're right.
Because boycott requires that a whole bunch of folks take up action against this one thing.
Yeah.
And those can be successful or not. In the case of sanctions, it's you just have a group of nations take up this thing, and that's like a boycott of saying, hey, instead of we need 1 million people not to buy XYZ, that the world's 3 largest retailers are just we're not gonna carry that product anymore because it sucks.
Yes.
Some of the sanctions do have a little bit of teeth. I mean, the ones around some of the financials, military bank, sovereign debt for foreign entities, their ability to move forward on deals with Gazprom and sending that to Germany. All of those things have a little bit more teeth and cause some pain. Right. But again, these guys are already at a point where they have no out. Putin either would cut his losses and say, halfway through and back with his tail between his legs. Not going to happen. That's Putin. Or he moves forward and it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. There's no escape for him, so he is.
Yeah. But I almost hate to use the analogy, but it is kind of like a game of chess.
Yep.
I'm going to lose my knight, but like whatever, I'm playing the long game, and I'm hoping that in the end, I come out with more chess pieces on the board than the opponent.
I will make a comment here just to keep us on track a little bit here that I am no longer an infectious disease specialist. I am a international political analyst now. So that's where my expertise
Facebook
are.
Certified?
Yeah, Facebook certified. So
Very nice.
I think we should
don't say on the air. You should save that for Facebook comments.
I
Larry.
know I should, but I just want to make sure that maybe we're not going too far down the political thing and stick to the cybers, as it were.
But it does.
does.
I mean, there's very much a tie to cyber. I mean,
Marpa's got a comment.
Go ahead, Marpa.
Okay, so here's the deal. The Ukraine is absolutely necessary for multiple reasons. And one of the biggest ones, the two biggest ones rather, are one, the resources that they hold. And the list of resources that the Ukraine holds is ridiculous. They are a huge economy. They have mineral resources and coal and oil and tantalum and all sorts, like just ridiculous. And second, Putin wants the gang back together. So that's it for political.
Yep.
Yeah.
In terms of cybers, you have a lot of people that are looking at this going, this is a bad indicator. And for example, Estonia, a lot of countries that were not countries for a long time, or they were part of a republic. I mean, technically they were countries, but they weren't, are terrified. And this is definitely a bellwether, an indicator.
Yeah, it could set a precedent, but it could also be indicative of cyber attacks, not just on Ukraine, Josh, what you're saying, but Georgia and in other countries as well.
So Estonia has the Estonian cyber militia, and they're one of the sort of the best out there right now. But there are other countries that are starting to build. I mean, so shameless plug, Tyler, Sci-Hub Armenia, right? You know, there are other countries that are starting to try to build out their capabilities, that are trying to build out their cyber capabilities. And I think that's wonderful, don't get me wrong. Look, let's be honest. If you're going to have a physical war with tanks and people with guns, or you're going to have a cyber war
but there's going to be a cyber component to it, I think, is how we tie it all back to cybersecurity.
Yep, there has to be.
But in the end, I'd rather there be a cyber war than a physical one. There's going to be a lot less casualties.
It depends.
Perhaps.
It depends. Depends on what they target and where they target.
And how much of those social norms or like we're not going to take out your power grid. Larry and I have our own countries, right?
Yep.
Larry and I have cyber capabilities. Larry and I both have capabilities to take out each other's power grid, but we won't because we don't want to hurt each other in that way. We don't want to violate the unspoken and unwritten rules or laws.
You're talking about the proxy wars.
Yeah, of combat, right? I mean, there's different terms for that.
Instead, what I'll do is I'll go hack your banks and I'll wipe all the bank records.
Right. Or
because that has already happened in Ukraine.
You'll hack into Josh's country, and from Josh's country, you'll take out my power grid.
Or I'll hack
hack
everything
into
in every
Josh's
country.
country and take out his power grid because Josh is an ally to Paul. And so in the proxy wars, you take out all the friends and you try to deprive your opponent of their friends without directly attacking them.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I get
But
it.
this will all play out. But this will all play out basically on the internet.
Lee, there is no end that. Yeah.
So and then one other move, you're going to turn around and you're going to DDoS him so that their internet's completely frozen. You can take out their phones, all their comms. I mean, give them a little denial of service there.
Yep.
Just
Who wins in the end? Is it who's most resilient or who is most offensive or some combination of the two? This is all going to bad places, by the way.
Who's most political?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I saw this series of tweets from our good friend Mick Douglas today.
Yeah.
And it starts out with, this morning, I've had 3 calls with customers, and it's not even 10 a.m., asking what they can do to help prevent potential incoming cyber threats from Russia over the Ukraine stuff and U.S. involvement in Ukraine. And he went through this whole list of things that you should be doing that was absolutely fantastic. Multi-factor authentication, egress, doubling down on your egress filtering, looking through and maintaining some of your logs in these particular cases.
What we've said for years, don't be the soft target.
And my answer is, if you haven't been doing those already,
a little late.
Yeah, it's a little late.
There is one new trick in the bunch, though, and that is there are now DDoS protections you can get from a lot of providers, either your ISP or cloud service provider. Those are new to most people. You should probably be looking at those too.
Something like Cloudflare, depending.
Yeah, like Cloudflare or Azure has it. There's a bunch of them. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean,
look into
the more
that.
commodity ones that are kind of baked into some of the larger providers are probably good for many. If you're probably in the camp of really paranoid about that already, you've already gone to what I would deem as kind of the upper echelon in that DDoS protection.
Right.
What's the company that did? Oh, they were a sponsor for a while. They did a bunch of DNS stuff. They were involved. One of the founders was involved in taking down Conficker. They're a big DNS company. Now I can't think of it.
Not OpenDNS, Arbor Networks,
Dyn or whatever they're called.
No.
Din DNS.
No, it wasn't Dyn.
Or
Now I
Dyn
can't
DNS.
think of it. Wow.
Yeah,
My memory
like I said,
stinks lately.
Also, I still think DDoS isn't common enough in people's lexicon. Yeah, a lot of services have it, and there's layers, but I know I want to make sure people are looking for it. Make sure they got it if it's available, because this is a new trick.
Yep.
And it's a little late.
So speaking of these types of things, looking at the Ukraine stuff, some folks that Paul, we know, Johannes Ulrich, Sans ISC, and so forth, did some looking into some of this type of stuff, and the Ukraine Ministry of Defense and a few other similar sites are behind Cloudflare and are still up. However, the Ukrainian Parliament isn't behind Cloudflare and is down hard.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
I guess you kind of made my point, Larry.
Yep. We talk about, Lee, you talk about DDoS and denial of service and any of that type of stuff. I'm not positive, but some tweets in a language comprised largely of Cyrillic that I saw indicated that as part of at midnight Ukrainian time, they've instituted emergency lockdowns and those types of things, state of emergency And as a result, they are taking control of digital media, including television and radio, and digital media, which could also mean internet. And they are seriously restricting and or turning off those services. So they're turning off their own internet. Excuse me.
Kind of hard to hack if you don't have anything to hack against.
Again, yeah. Yep.
So let's put it this way. Ladies and gentlemen, please do the fundamentals or your shit will get taken down. Thank you.
Yeah. Narrator, they didn't do the fundamentals.
Unbelievable.
So back to a little bit of our original story, Lee.
Mm-hmm.
It's and Tyler, to some of the stuff that we're seeing from CISA, they are, they've apparently got some pretty good indicators that this is the same group with Sandworm that has switched up their tactics a little bit to use their new, quote, Cyclops Blink stuff and the VPN filter malware.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting and obviously very telling of the fact that either they've got, the gang back together, they've got capabilities that they're willing to burn on this type of operation, and or the TTPs are close enough that they're utilizing a lot of the same groups and or people that can operate a new set of malware. So I think it's kind of cool that they're tracking it, for one. For two, it's very interesting what this means from this is in the public, they've discovered this, what are we not seeing and what are we not discovering, what's A-Team doing.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like they've been paying attention to these guys. They didn't, this, because some of the information is from 2019 or earlier, and they're connecting the dots, but somebody's been on the ball keeping an eye on this. And I have to imagine there's been a blip lately. This is why it's all being updated, even though it feels old. Yeah. And of course, the old shit still works, right?
Yep. Sometimes it does.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, okay, so
You sound like
there
you
are
speak from
multiple.
experience, Larry.
Yeah.
No, Larry's
will we-
old shit does work, but according to his wife, it's just okay. Anyway, so no, but there are multiple train systems that I have knowledge of this that are still using the equipment that they were installed with in the 1940s, 60s, and 1890s. Not a joke, for switching hardware, because they are not able to be hacked, and that's deliberate. So, for example, and I think I've said this earlier today, but the New York City subway, for example, their switching equipment is from the 1890s. They're slowly getting rid of it because they literally can't find the metal to make the part. They have machinists that all they do is make parts to repair these things. And as I understand it, this could have changed. I mean, they've started to computerize some pieces of it, but they're running out of the metals to actually make the pieces. So they're like, fine, screw it, we'll computerize it.
That's
Crazy.
1890s. That's crazy.
Electromechanical switching has been around for just a little bit of a time. You know, if there's a guy I know that actually told me about these hydro plants that every few decades they put a layer of communication in front of it. In other words, if you go to a dam in Canada, they have the manual switches that actually had like holes drilled in them to put an armature on so that a machine can pull it. And then behind the manual switches from like 1800s, you will see the hydraulic switches and apparatus from the 1920s. And then behind that, you'll see the pneumatic pieces and electromechanical pieces in the 1940s, then the computerized equipment in the 1960s, like on a VAX, and then you'll see the current IoT device from the 1990s or 2000s behind that. So literally, when somebody flips a switch or changes a setting, it takes 2 or 3 seconds to roll through all the layers of equipment, and they don't replace it because nobody knows how it works anymore.
Crazy.
That I feel
I'll
like
tell you who
is,
that was. That was a good friend of mine whose daughter is married to our next guest. James Arlen.
Yeah, right. Yes, I recently learned of this connection.
Yes. The 10,000 cent pyramid. which can
God.
no longer be the 10,000 cent pyramid because it used to be in Canadian pennies, and Canada doesn't have the penny anymore.
But we throw this phrase around, Josh, that you just uttered, which was nobody knows how it works. Is that because we don't want to understand how it works? We don't want to put the time to understand how it works? And this is one of the fundamental issues we have in security today, is that legacy stuff sticks around because I don't think it's just because nobody knows how it works, but because we don't want to take the time to understand how the older technology works. We want to focus on the shiny new hotness in the cloud and not understand how this legacy stuff works, no?
Paul, how many times have you gone to a bank to do a security assessment, a strategy discussion, whatever, and they're like, oh, yeah, we've got a COBOL mainframe in the basement, or metaphorical basement. And you go, well, when are you getting rid of that? And they're like, why? It works.
Every time.
But how are you maintaining it? We've got a kid that we hired, and we told him, you follow this guy around for the next 3 years and learn his job, and then you'll have his job for the next 50 years, and we'll guarantee that. And that's literally what banks are doing. This is not a joke. Like, I've literally seen this happen in the past,
so we haven't
6 months or a year.
Enough about it to change it or implement something new because of the cost.
We don't.
I mean, there's a cost.
There's a cost. If I want to go back and unravel the spaghetti code from the 1970s, I'm going to have to unravel all of the code from the 1970s because that's fun. And
because you have to rebuild your software stack
from scratch.
Rich Mogul and I were chatting for an upcoming interview on this show, and that's what we were talking about. And I've underestimated the amount of work it takes to rewrite code or retrofit it into the cloud, into more modern technology stacks. And we don't want to absorb that cost.
So I've project managed projects to do that. The rule of thumb is that if you think it's going, if you say, okay, what are the functions that this piece of software does? Okay, and it does X, Y, and Z. All right. Okay, so what would it take to build that from scratch? Brand new, never saw a line of code, whatever. Well, it would take us 1,000 hours. All right, we've got a program that does it, but it's spaghetti code from 20 or 30 years ago. What will it take to, transfer it over? At least 1,200 hours. Because first you have to understand what it does and unravel it all. Then you have to rewrite it from scratch. So realistically, you'll save some time on the workflow because they've already designed the workflows for you and a little bit of the UI. But you're spending just as much time as designing it from scratch. So nobody wants to pay twice.
Right. That's the problem. I think you hit the nail on the head there, Josh. No one wants to pay twice. Because if I've paid twice, well, then I have to pay a third time.
Maybe even a fourth or fifth time.
Right. So I just need to keep rewriting my software.
Well, Paul, you always rewrite your software because you suck, but
all the time.
I'm sorry.
All the time.
Wow. Shots fired.
In defense, I'm rewriting a lot of other people's code too that have come and gone and worked on the software.
Agreed.
Bravo and well said, sir. But
also some of my own code where I'm like,
the fuck was I thinking?
Come on. How many of us have looked at our code and gone, what was I thinking? And then how many of us have looked at other people's code and gone, what were they thinking? Yep.
Now try to do it from code that was from 20 years ago, from programmers that were there for a year, 6 months, 10 days, whatever. And the documentation consists of like 3 cryptic characters that go to a legend that was lost at least 15 years ago in a manual that is now yellowed paper and a rubbish bin.
Usually that's
somewhere.
like, how does this even work in the first place? But you know it works.
Yeah, in a language.
Because it does work.
In a language that you're completely unfamiliar with, like COBOL.
Yes.
Assembly.
Pascal.
Turbo Pascal.
Oh, yeah. Tyler and I were right there with the Pascal.
Fortran with a Visual Fox Pro database.
Yep. Oh, all this stuff exists today, though.
Alpha 4.
What?
That was a language. When I went into healthcare, that was a programming language that my boss wanted me to learn because their home.
Was that a Borland language?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Because their internal IT ticketing help desk system was written by one of the directors in Alpha 4.
It's amazing, though, as we develop software, how much we write it and we're like, oh, like this will be replaced someday. Like I think we all write software and go, this will be replaced someday. Like, in other words, I can not comment my code, take some shortcuts, do some fancy things. Like, this will have a limited lifespan. And I think as now we understand it, that lifespan is always much longer, infinity in some cases, right? Where we never get around to rewriting it. And then we just write new software to provide new functionality, and we just compound the problem. Software security is a deep issue, man. It's a deep issue. I think I've had more, not necessarily stumping the guest, but the hardest questions, that we've asked are, how do we get to a point where we can secure software? S-bombs are part of that, Josh. I know you can hop on your S-bomb.
No. But actually, the question is, start defining your terms. What is secure?
Yeah. How resilient should it be? What should the lifespan be? What is the measurement? Well, I think that's a good level set, Josh. How do we measure what it means to have secure software? What is the measurement? How many bugs it has?
If you can define secure, if you can tell me that secure means it will withstand a 0 day, or it will withstand a this, or 0 days are okay because we can't predict them, but the code has been Turing tested, or like there's a lot of potential definitions.
A lot of
it'll withstand PA 2541 unsophisticated hacker.
Yeah,
for the aviation one.
There is how resilient is it to what level of sophistication of adversary you're going up against, but you have to understand that adversaries share information, so you're really up against all the adversaries, from the smartest one to the not so smartest ones.
Right.
Because
and here's the kicker. I mean, the topic of defining security that I just brought up. All that is about understanding your environment and understanding your threat level and understanding what's going on around you, your risks, and quantifying your risk and risk quantification. And so, the S-bombs, which you mentioned, are part of it, and there's lots of other pieces of it. But until you can quantify your threats, your risks, your assets, your abilities to protect against all of those, your controls, and so on and so forth, you can't do any of this. It's kind of tough, at least. We've been doing it by the seat of our pants for 30 years, haven't we?
Is that, I don't know if that's part of the problem or part of the solution, right? Because by the seat of our pants means we got something out the door that's useful to some people and has some features in it, and we can use it. Downside of that is we did it by the seat of our pants and didn't threat model and build in enough resiliency so that when someone like from Qualys' research team looks at it, they can find a bug in 3 months.
And so now our cyber insurance costs are going through the bloody roof, 30 to 300% increase per year, I think it is. And so you can't even and if you have a large enough company and you're like, well, we need $100 million in cyber insurance. Oh God, I got to get 5 or 10 providers to provide that. So
because they're realizing, like we have realized a long time ago, that everything is broken.
and only recently have the cyber insurance providers realized that, because they started getting whacked for how many claims? And with all the claims, now they're not covering, or they're covering limited amounts, or they're pricing through the roof. And so now the cost of doing business is rising if you do business on the internet or e-commerce or any kind of application development. So now that the cost of business is rising, guess who's going to bear the brunt of that? Is the people that buy, the companies that buy, the downstream on the supply chain. And when you put that into place, and eventually cyber insurance companies just going to be like, no, I'm not writing that stuff. And then how do you compete for contracts where it's built into the contract that you must be compliant with X compliance standard, which says you must have cyber insurance? Sorry, I know I'm going off on a rant. I apologize, but it's a fascinating topic.
And cyber insurance is on the precipice of requiring and validating what the level of maturity, what steps you're taking, like outside of just questionnaires and even the compliance standards you adhere to. They're going to start doing their own level checks to make sure that you're of a certain height to get a policy, or if you have been breached, like what you've done to ensure that doesn't happen again. So it is getting much more sophisticated. There's a lot of things that cyber insurance is going to help push, but we still are, we're still going to have places that don't use cyber insurance, so there's still issues.
Yeah.
Any big breaches? What were the breaches this week?
Like definitely want to cover the one on the aviation. Like, that was hilarious. The Nigerian actor that they didn't even make a clever name to. They just labeled him TA 2541. Unsophisticated hacker.
Yeah.
Yep.
That one was great. So he's been obviously operating for several years and just sending hundreds of thousands of emails with off the shelf rats, and trying to get into aviation and was it aerospace, I believe. But they said it was so ridiculous as far as like how unsophisticated and how blatant the attacks were, but it was still working. They tracked a bunch of rats from NetWire to Async Rat that this actor was able to successfully get in and do things with just by sending
Word documents. Yeah, Word documents with VBSs and Google Drive links and.
He was just taking advantage of volume, right? You know, maybe 1 in a million will click, so I'll send 2 million messages or something. You know,
he brought the Nigerian hammer way to APT Nigeria.
It's true. It's like
that balance of sophistication and unsophistication in a target. Like, you can be, I think, unsophisticated and cast a wide net and have a level of success. But the more targeted you are, I feel like the more sophisticated you have to become. But this guy proved me wrong.
Yep.
It does not fit any model or anything.
I mean, arguably, it kind of fits with like the spam email model. Like, why do we get spam emails?
Yeah.
Because it works.
They work.
Because they work. Because the return on investment for someone to send 1 million spam emails, like the amount that they have to get people, it's like 5 people they need to get to click to make it worth their while.
So, like, if you get a message from me about canned meat, you shouldn't open it. You know why? Because it's spam.
It's a potted meat product.
Oh my God!
I'll be here all night. Try the veal, Josh.
And this made me think. This made me think of Lee. Kristen was in Walmart the other day, and she took a picture of the spam potted meat product aisle, and there's like a dozen different flavors. And my immediate comment was, "These Hawaiians have gone too far."
With their ham.
For pandemic stock up, we bought this like several different varieties of spam. We've been eating it over the last few years, of course. The bacon flavored spam is actually pretty damn good.
And how do you cook that? Just a deviation.
Slice it up and fry it.
You slice it up and fry it. You put it on a sandwich or
put it in an omelet.
Omelet, sandwich.
Pizza.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's surprisingly good. And so we've taken it camping because of that.
Like, do you sous vide your spam?
Why not?
What?
That would be amazing.
No. Masubi.
Oh, Masubi?
I thought you said sous vide. I was like, if you're
I know you did. That's why I said Masubi with
make
the
sure
M.
you take it out of the metal can, I think, before you sous vide it. I think you want to... or not.
Why?
Maybe. I don't know.
Why?
You know what? If you sous vide your spam, I want to know your recipe because I think that's amazing.
I mean, do we need to make it...
thinking about
I'm
going to conduct experiments this weekend.
Do we really need to make it more tender, though?
It would just be mush. And then you just fry it up like hash when it becomes mushy. I don't...
Yeah. Or remember, spam and Twinkies will survive the nuclear winter.
And Keith Richards.
That goes without saying.
Right?
And your COBOL code.
Yeah, yes.
What about my RPG2 code? Can I keep that too?
Yes.
Yes. You definitely can keep that. Please keep it.
More ransomware. Lee, your story number 2, Seattle-based logistics and freight forwarding company Expeditors International is targeted with... You think they were targeted, or was that a target of opportunity? Or do you think that the threat actors are still trying to target the supply chain?
I think the threat actors are targeting supply chain. I mean, these guys are global, and pretty much they're stopped. They're stuck. They're restoring from backups. They're posting one update a day on the website. the downtime notice is at the bottom of my comments in there. And it's like some server with like near zero bandwidth because it takes forever for it to come up. So I got to figure these guys are in a world of hurt. And I think it was a supply chain disruption motivated attack. And they just got lucky.
But this is like triple dipping, right? This is like I collect money for my ransom. I collect money so that I don't sell your data on the dark web. And when I collect that money, maybe it's quadruple dipping. I still sell your data on the dark web. And if you're in the supply chain that affects an enemy country of where I'm in, that's also a win for my nation state. And like if I'm in Russia, maybe they leave me alone. I've collected like a triple funding, and they're like, "Oh, like good comrade, you disrupted the supply chain for an enemy."
I'm not going to take. I'm not going to take out your power grid.
Right, but I'm going to go target. Go ahead, Tyler.
I was going to say any of the intelligence though that was gained for any of the networks that either they ransomed, unsuccessfully ransomed, or had access to, all of that information and data within inside of other companies and the supply chains and vendors that those had access to are now going to be the secondary effects, secondary targets, just like a pen test, just like a threat actor.
Oh, I see. So like I popped, so what you're saying, Tyler, is I popped this company. I've got access to all of their information, so I see who they're working with, where they fit in the supply chain, stick that in my back pocket. I continue my ransomware campaign, collect some money, extortion, the whole thing, disruption, and then I go, okay, after all that's said and done, now I start going through the data that I collected and go, oh, you fit in the supply chain in this way, and you're up or downstream from this other supplier, and that's my next target.
Yep. And you know who talks to who, what kind of invoicing they use, maybe what kind of monetary or
commonalities, right?
They have. So now you know how big of revenue because of questionnaires sent out for procurement. So you start to build these target lists from targets that you've already acquired, and that just starts to tree out. And we'll see this for many years to come, I'm sure.
And the Port of Los Angeles has created a new cyber resilience center.
Kind of makes sense.
Yeah,
that's a deal.
But we've seen a lot of what's been happening at the various ports across specifically the state of California, and there's a lot to unpack there, right? It's not just it's the ships, it's the ports, it's the offloading the containers, it's the containers getting on the truck, and then also now
getting on the right truck.
Getting on the right, yes, not in other, yes. There's a lot of nefarious things happening there, but now also protecting that infrastructure against cyber attack seems to now be in the forefront. But also, I think making sure that infrastructure just works, regardless of a cyber attack or not, maybe should take a higher priority to make sure we can get the goods into the ports, get them to the right places. Also, concurrently, perhaps this initiative is also important to make sure that from a cyber resilience perspective, which I actually like the term, that they're operating to be able to defend that infrastructure. And then the question is, where's the funding come from?
That was my question. Like, that's great, and ports are very important. They're almost critical infrastructure, and there's a lot to do. You can get a lot of info, pass off goods. There's billions of dollars sitting there that can be transactioned in dark webs. But how do you actually do a good job around this from a cybersecurity standpoint? And then if you are doing that, like, how do you get the funding and the talent to do this? There's a lot of other, I would say, bigger fish out there that are in the public or the limelight or being attacked more readily than the port. But, it's kind of cool that they're doing it, I guess, but it's also an interesting strategic play from California for places that may not be at the top of my priority list for cyber resiliency programs.
So they hired IBM, which we know isn't going to be inexpensive, but they're big. They're going to have the resources to get the job done. So, and you're right. It's not going to come out of the goodness of their heart. I'm sure they're getting funding from the state, but I'm sure they're also going to be hitting the tax on the shippers. hopefully not too bad.
There's also some interesting data from the SANS Internet Storm Center that shows the rise and fall of Log4Shell. I mean, this graph is really interesting. I mean, we talked about Log4j a lot. I mean, there was a lot to be said about that vulnerability. We all rang the bells, alarms, and whistles. But as Johannes's graph shows here, like, starting in like early January, according to their data sources, people kind of lost interest in looking for this. I'd like to see some other studies to correlate this to say that's really true, or I struggle with what happened here.
From vulnerabilities patched from what's now vulnerable in comparison to what's being targeted and or scanned. I mean, yeah, you're going to have a lot of security researchers, you're going to have a lot of security vendors, you're going to have a bunch of people trying to blog about it, a bunch of people trying to learn about it, a bunch of companies trying to see if they have it. So you're going to see a peak, and then you're going to see the downward trend of that. But you're also, if those aren't patched or if companies don't know about it still, you should still see a pretty steady line of, we'll say, semi-sophisticated actors picking this up and leveraging it. That, or they've picked it up, implanted, and patched it for them so that there's not other actors inside the network, which is also a possibility.
Or like most people have scanned for this, and now it's settling out, including good actors and bad actors alike. Like, are there scans showing maybe some good actors scanning? It depends on how they're collecting this data. But I think good actors and bad actors alike were scanning for this when it first came out heavily.
Or we just had really bad ADD, and honestly, what's left out there are the more sophisticated and advanced attacks. Yes, there's a million input places on the internet, forums, different websites. There's a lot of things that have not been scanned or looked at other than the trivial ones that are pretty easy to identify. What's left out there is the more advanced stuff, and our ability to maintain an attention span longer than a couple of weeks for security and doing research out of the goodness of our heart, there's only going to be the hard stuff, and a lot of people may not be looking for those hard things.
Yep. And Tyler, exactly to your point, I think they probably did a pretty good job of all of those publicly facing, internet facing stuff got patched pretty quickly, got patches pushed, and now the rest of the stuff is all those 300 internal applications that are a little bit harder to reach, that are still going to show up in your internal pen test, that haven't been patched. You don't know that it has Log4j, so I think maybe that's part of it. I also look at this graph, and the timeline looks pretty interesting to me, in that it goes up, and then it falls off around and at the lowest right about Christmas.
Yep.
And then there's a big spike right after Christmas. Like a bunch of security researchers taking the week between Christmas and New Year's off.
That's a good observation.
Hey, I've got some free time. I want to check this thing out. Like, this was a big deal in the news a couple of weeks ago.
No way.
I'm just saying. Just saying. That's my interpretation of the data.
But then I mean, to Tyler's point, like, then the stuff we're looking for now, maybe it evaded the sensors. Like, the way I'm looking for it now is different, and not necessarily blatantly scanning the internet for test strings that we know to exist. I'm scanning it differently now.
Yep. Maybe.
But maybe, right? I mean, we don't know.
Yep, Lee.
So look, one of my questions is, do you think with a drop like this, people will say, good enough, we'll stop trying to fix Log4j, and it just will remain one of those exploits that's from 5 years ago you read about in the SysUp page that still works because people stop fixing it?
Probably.
I think you're going to find a lot of internal applications. You're going to find a lot of places in which this might get used to embed hardware, or more difficult, obscure areas. Medical is a great one. ICS, OT, manufacturing, all those places. We're going to see this for a while, and it's going to be leveraged to gain kind of that initial foothold or the initial execution point once an act has a foothold in the environment. So it's going to be kind of a go-to. I think it's going to be similar to like Eternal Blue. Once an actor's internal and has that C2 available to him, he's going to find something like Log4j, use that to make his pivot to other more interesting things.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
I totally agree. It's an entry point. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, remember that case where the journalist was accused of hacking
by doing view source?
Yes. And I think as we predicted, Missouri Governor Mike Parson announced that he first wanted to prosecute the journalist who had warned them about that flaw, and last week says that no charges would be filed.
Let's be clear. The governor didn't say fuck all. The governor's office couldn't be reached for comment, but the prosecutor hired brought out the state police in for an investigation, and the prosecutor and the state police found that
there was no crime committed.
There was no crime committed. It was information that was available to the public for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the particular journalist was being prosecuted for conducting journalism and was acting in good faith.
And I want to say the journalist in this case practiced responsible, tried to contact them about it.
They contacted, did the disclosure, and said, I'm not publishing my article until it's fixed.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, not only did he not hack the system, he just viewed source. He actually responsibly disclosed it. I mean, hello, we need to reward that behavior, not punish it.
And the specific article said that governor's office couldn't be reached for comment or did not respond to comments, and that some of the folks involved felt that the reporter was being persecuted for the failures in the governor's office,
right,
and their failure to secure that stuff. So they were they were turning them into a scapegoat for things that they had screwed.
Yeah, I was going to say the word is scapegoat, right?
Yeah. And like Ona, I mean, we've all made software, and we've all made software that has flaws in it, and just own it, fix it, be transparent. Transparency is the key. I want to go back, Tyler, to there was a quiz system. Now we all know about these quiz websites, right? And I think it's a really good segue. I don't know what's happened since with disclosure on this particular issue, and I'm not sure how widespread these types of problems are in these types of websites and or products, I guess you could call them, where we all know what we're talking about. I don't want to name names, right? But we go to a website and we all register for the same game. It presents us with questions and there are answers and we answer them. Some of them are recording your time to give your answer, and all of them are obviously recording your answer to said question, so we can all play games together online. And I think a lot of us have played these games. We've used some of these here on the show. What folks found, some of our very astute listeners have found, is that a number of different vulnerabilities could exist in some of these systems, right? The ones that, for example, track the time and the answer is in the browser. So if I intercept the requests and responses, I can alter my response to have the correct answer and have a time value of whatever value that I want. Also, with respects to the answer, a particular quiz system would send down the correct answer with the request in the request.
Hey, send me the
body.
webpage. The correct answer is.
Yeah, so when you load the questions and answers from the website, inside of that response from the server is all the question, the answers, and the correct answer.
Wordle.
Yeah, like this is. I've heard Wordle is a lot of similar systems handle this the same way, and the disclosure on this is pretty interesting because I'd imagine it's going to require some significant re-architecture. This is not a trivial thing to patch, in my opinion.
No, this is common for a lot of web apps that rely on very stringent time capabilities or are very sensitive to latencies and or the ability for them to go offline and come back online with something like state. So a lot of that is offloaded to the client side, which in good coding, most places are not always following good coding. They don't realize that anything pushed to the client side should be deemed unsafe and therefore have to be either validated or, if it is sensitive, not pushed down to the client. So again, very, very common mistake. We see it even in financial applications and very, very large applications.
Tyler, e-commerce applications?
Oh, e-commerce, yes.
Vaccine websites.
Yep.
Coupon codes are a huge one for e-commerce, where you can specify your discount number because that is all managed on the client side, and they're just doing a lookup. And once it's validated and they provide the validation, then the transaction is done after the validation. So you end up with a logic error.
Yeah, don't push the price of your product into the browser in a field that you can send back in the response.
Or more importantly, you don't trust the response that comes back.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think a lot of this is done for performance, right? I don't want to have to go make a read to my database to validate what's coming down. I want to read what's in my database once. I'm going to push that down to the client. It does all the validation. I don't want to validate every single item in the cart that is the price with my database because that takes a performance hit. That's just my guess. Other people that are better at software architecture than I am may disagree and may have a deeper story to tell, and I'm sure they do, but that's kind of the gist that I get from it.
Yeah, don't do it the other way. Ask Tyler and I how we know this.
It happens. I heard you guys tell that story. Yeah.
Yep.
It's crazy. Hopefully we get that stuff fixed, though, but again, the fix is not.
Yeah, it takes some re-architecture for sure. For sure.
Tyler's just smiling. We'll talk offline.
Yes, we will.
This actually give you rewards for these things.
Yeah.
Right?
Free ham.
Free ham.
Spam.
It's free spam. Wait, no. Which kind of spam?
No.
Oh.
Larry,
spam, Yair Silberman, his handle is spam. He's actually had his hotel reservations canceled at conferences because they think it's literally spam.
Oh, jeez.
Choose your handles accordingly.
Yep.
Larry, any of your stories you want to dive into?
Let's see. I don't know if we put it in the other day, and it's a little bit, and it was in our workflow, and I deleted it, and after I deleted it, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have had that deleted, but it was along the lines of Ukrainians that are SDR enthusiasts should be very careful right about now, because while the Ukrainian stuff is potentially pretty open and free about what they can listen to, those may be changing, and as seen by some of their state of emergencies and so forth, that their digital broadcasts and digital communications are changing. So there were clearly some times in some times of invasion where citizens in possession of something like a software-defined radio was deemed by invading forces as spy equipment.
Interesting.
And they were very unhappy individuals. So.
Actually, I had one I thought we could talk about briefly.
Yes.
Just because I thought it was kind of cool. It was my number 3 story where CISA launched this catalog of public and private sector services, including tools. In other words, what people could do for free. I thought that was kind of neat because, it's another place we can point somebody as like, well, where do I get X, Y, and Z? I mean, I know we've got a bazillion resources out there, but, here's one that's organized, it's going to be updated, and it has services CISA offers for free as well. I realize they're probably a bit oversubscribed. They're trying to hire, but still, I thought that was really a nice way because I still believe there are businesses who don't know which way to look, where to go, and who to trust.
This is specific to critical infrastructure.
No. Well, yes, but this is.
But that's a loose term. That's a loose term, right?
Okay. It can be used by anybody.
If you're a private sector company and you provide a good or service that is in a supply chain that is critical by definition, you can get a free pen test, in other words.
Yep.
But you can actually get a free pen test from CISA because you're in the U.S.
That too. You may be out a couple of years, but
Right. Well, that's where you got to.
There's a waiting list.
yes.
Right. But
Interesting.
like I said, they're focusing on critical, but like I said, their services are available for everybody. Make contact with your local CISA people. Talk turkey with them about what's when, and how are they prioritizing. Our guys up here are hiring like mad. I don't know if you remember his name, Tyler, but it's Josh Stem, who used to be InfraGard.
Yep.
He's a local Idaho contact now for the whole state.
Robert Akey's still over there. Unfortunately, Jason just left. But there's a pretty awesome crew here. Jason's still here. Well,
Well, like I said, they're worth knowing.
yeah, they're good guys.
I just wanted to bring it up.
Doing a lot.
That's really cool. And also a lot of reports coming out of CISA as well. That just the sheer volume, finding the nuggets in there, I think is if anyone has links to that stuff, I think that's really good. That's a positive thing. Some pretty cool data that they've analyzed that'll be showcased in some upcoming segments here on Security Weekly that I learned about today.
Cool.
So make sure you stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
What else we got?
The FSB article was actually pretty good. The website itself was very interesting. It was a little bit hard to navigate, but it was also fun to navigate because it was not like a regular website. But they kind of just walk through a lot of, we'll say, what they've attributed to FSB, which, again, I think they're blanketing the FSB and GRU, which some things may not overlap and are two separate and autonomous groups, but they do cover some of the cool stuff around FSB and the capabilities and why they're who they are and why they've been doing it for so long. So I thought it was pretty cool. Or for those that don't know FSB, I think it's what is it? Tarula Group and Ouroboros. I think that's
Ouroboros.
Ouroboros, yeah. The snake eating its tail.
Yeah, the world ending.
Yeah, so there's some cool TTPs and history with inside of that, and they kind of go into what the group has been doing and for how long. Again, the website was very.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, it's interesting.
It scrolls and actually navigates, but yeah, there's some cool stuff in there. That was a good article.
Definitely one of the more unique presentations.
Nice. So shall we wrap it up?
Let's wrap it up and come back after a short break with our interview with Chris Sistrunk. Stay tuned.